Tom did provide us with the minutes for the March 27th meeting. I'll have a motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Mayor's communication, other than what's on the agenda. Nicole, do you have anything? Chris, you're the only public here. Okay. Shane, you want to say anything on your student member report?
Nope.
I haven't given you any tasks lately. There are some documents here, same as we sent out. Okay, new business. I want to reopen RCV, but I won't do that without the committee's permission.
No, I understand.
The reason is new information has come about to me that influences my decision, and I felt the committee should know about it. One of the things is Barbara has confirmed. Hey, Tom. We just started, Tom. We approved your minutes. They were great. We're talking about RCD and why I want to reopen discussion. One of the information is that ballot questions can be as many as we want, and if we wanted to put a second amendment on there for precinct counselors, it could be a separate question. That would have influenced my vote had I known that for sure. And the reason for that is I was concerned that putting too many things on RCV on one question would bump the one that I really wanted was the mayor. That's personal, but that's that's new information. Secondly, Barbara correctly pointed out that perhaps B and C should be in Article 9, which is more about transitioning. I agree with that, but we'd have to reopen discussion to move them to Article 9. And lastly, I've heard the council may want to amend, and I thought, why don't we discuss, especially precinct counselors, before it gets to the council, especially since I think I changed my vote. But I'm not going to do this as chair. I would rather open this up to discussion and a motion to reopen ranked choice voting for further discussion and a revote. What is the pleasure of the committee? We've already voted on it, so.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why.
I just gave you my reasons.
I know those are your reasons, but I don't think any of, I guess I'm not sure why. I thought we were all pretty clear in the discussions.
I didn't know about that.
But in reality, isn't it gonna, I mean, this is the first step. So there's gonna be more, I mean, would your vote have swayed it to a no? I don't know. And I guess I'm concerned as to why we need to reopen the whole thing. I think it's moving forward, which is
Well,
what
I am
what we
concerned about
want.
moving stuff to Article 9 where I think it belongs, but that, we don't have to do that. We can do it at the council level, which delays everything, because the council level changes things, has to go back to the city attorney, then it has to go out to the legislature. So I thought I would help that process.
Sure, but
Wait to Pat's
no, go ahead. Because I'm just trying to understand it, why we need to.
Right.
It seems like there's two things here. So one of the things is just a matter of like a procedural thing where we voted that these are changes that we wanted, but where exactly that language should land is a matter that I think we need to obviously discuss.
We could open just Article 9 as section and not open precinct counselor. That's up to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we can do the whatever way the committee feels is best, and I think that we all agree that that's there. And then the other matter is whether we want to reconsider the sort of policy question in light of the information that you received. I mean, like, I have my thoughts and they're known to the committee, so it's, just, I guess it's up to everybody else.
I'm slightly perplexed about putting it in Article 9.
Well, let's not discuss that. Let's discuss only reopening discussion, whether we're going to reopen the discussion at all.
We should definitely,
Sarah, so if you want to reopen the discussion, then we can go to Article 9, I guess.
Well, I move that we open a discussion.
Do we? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to reopen RCV. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. 1, 2. Any hands up?
Sure. Why not? What the heck?
Who's a no?
Dave. I don't
I feel like we talked about it and we voted, and we have a lot on our plate tonight. And
So you're a no.
I don't know.
Okay, but we have, David's a yes, Pat's a yes, I'm a yes.
Yes, I'll abstain, not having been at the last vote.
One,
Probably
two,
not
three,
appropriate for me
four.
to say
Joe?
yes or no.
I'm so confused. Why does Barb think we should move it to 9?
And I don't understand why we can't just discuss
there you
why,
are.
why we can't.
I can explain that. I mean, I got thinking about it later that the whole deciding how it's gonna work and having a budget thing, I mean, that's really just, it's a transitional thing. And once it's done, then it will be done. So really it can go, you know, it's not gonna be something that will always have to be under the elections. It's really it's a transitional thing. It's a process that once the format is set up and the budget's done and we're starting to do it, then like a lot of the stuff under transitional right now, it'll just be kind of, it'll just go away. But to have it up under the elections forever and ever, it didn't really, the more I thought about it, I said, I think it really should be, it's gonna be a transitional, this is how we implement it, but once it's implemented, we don't really need to see it in elections all the time.
So if I understand correctly, there will be language in elections saying the mayor's elected using ranked choice voting,
Right.
but then the language about creating the ad hoc committee
Will go
and what the standards that we have before we roll this out are, that should be in 9 because 9 is the transitional
All right,
section.
Joe, this is up to you. We have 4 votes in favor of opening the discussion. You asked Barbara why. So are you in favor of opening discussion, or are we just not?
Oh, that was all it was? Yeah, I thought we already voted to open the discussion.
No, we did. I only had 4 yeses.
I abstain because
And
I
Sarah said no.
Yes.
respect the decision. of the
Okay,
committee.
let's open discussion.
So,
Just trying to organize our thoughts here. Number 1, we have this document, which is how it is being currently sent to the legislature. It's the original language we proposed, including terms of office. That's where we are right now. I have a document I sent you, which does 2 things. 1, it considers ranked choice voting in precincts. It moves B and C to 9-6, A and B. And I am very concerned that the budget limitation we've put in B should have a sunset clause. Otherwise, as Tom, and I'd like you to go further into this, as explained in Memphis, they kept putting RCV into play, saying it was a budget issue. So we have 2 years. It could go 4 years with this language, but then it has to be implemented. In other words, if the voters say yes, a mayor can't keep presenting it. And I'm not saying Nicole would do this, but I'm saying a future mayor. And I think the language as it currently stands allows a mayor to constantly prevent it. Can you speak to Memphis on this, Tom?
Sure. I mean, I actually got to hang out with some of the Memphis guys a couple weeks back,
Jeez.
which was great. Their story is essentially that, yeah, the voters passed ranked choice voting by a ballot referendum, actually against the opposition of their city council, who did not want it. And the city government basically, or city and county, because that's how Tennessee works, essentially said, we don't have the resources to implement this, so we're not going to do it this year. And they just said that every year for a decade.
Yeah.
And then finally, people sort of pushed back, so they said, all right, fine, well, we're going to put something on the ballot to repeal it. And they attempted to do that, and the voters said, no, we still want it. So now they're finally taking the steps to actually do it. I mean, I don't really necessarily see that happening here, but I do think that when you're putting something in that is going to require like some resources, I don't think that there's necessarily any harm in putting something in to say, look, if this fiscal year this isn't going to work, then fine, but you need to find the money to do this within a certain
It's a
range of time.
4-year range of time. If the
Right.
first election would be, am I right, 2021?
Yeah.
And if Nicole's the mayor and we don't have the money, we'll do it the next election, okay. But it has to happen. What do you think
That
of
was
that?
one of my questions, actually. So if money was allocated for, one mayoral election, and then say the next mayoral election, there wouldn't be that money, I don't know, if something horrific happens, but once it's in the budget ranked choice, we don't go back and forth.
Well, the major budgetary thing is the getting the software, and if, hopefully, I mean, there's not a whole lot more than that, but after that, there would be the maintenance that we'd have to pay every year.
Right.
So the big chunk.
But that's a one-time
Initial
expense,
chunk,
isn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
It sounds like that could be a free cash or a stabilization one-time
I mean,
expense.
it's like $9,000,
Right.
but depending on
But it's a
how we
one-time
set it up,
expense.
Yeah.
depending on whether the machines can handle it, I mean, hopefully they'd be able to handle it, but if we do anything unique, it could be a lot, so.
Can that handling it be handled in the ordinance part of the charter? In other words,
Well, it would-
the council could adopt an ordinance to make sure that our machines and things can handle the way we're doing it?
We would work with the vendor right along to get the program so that hopefully if they
Yeah.
can
But I thought we
accommodate it.
knew that our current machines would do the job, which is,
Well, it depends on how it's set up, right, so
Right.
set up different ways. If we go like how Santa Fe has it, and they have the single winner, and but if we were to do something like Cambridge, that nobody's gonna do that, but Cambridge has their own ball of wax,
Yeah.
so you have to, depends on how you set it up.
But we originally, our original vote was to vote for ranked choice voting for the mayor's seat.
right.
So are you worried that we're gonna change that somehow between now and then? Okay.
It's like the whole of how the machines do the ranking.
Right.
and How, if we set up our ordinance to do ranking kind of
Yep.
weirdly or something, if we do a tradition, kind of a way that has been done already,
Yep.
using our machine, then it'll probably just
Okay.
be the cost of the democracy
Yep.
suite software.
Yep.
But,
And,
I mean.
Isn't that also why we said at-large would be difficult? Because there's a lot, it'd be very difficult for the machines.
And serve much less purpose.
For what it's worth, I do actually think that the Democracy Suite software does handle multi-winner. So provided that we just decided we're gonna do everything the way that the Democracy Suite, which is, the easiest, like the path of least resistance. If we just said we're going to use ranked choice voting as defined by the Democracy Suite software, then that's it. We've got that. And if we decided at some future point to move into multi-winner, like we would have already paid the licensing and had that there. I mean, the software is set up to do
But
it.
that can be set up through the ordinance part of the transition,
Yes.
correct? It doesn't have to be in the charter.
Right.
No, because it might be
part
the-
of what
Right.
is discussed by the committee goes into the ordinance.
Right, because at some point we might decide, I mean, like at some future point, we might decide to buy new machines, and those machines might
Right.
have a different
Yeah.
software that, like mathematically yields the same results, but the process internally is slightly different.
Yeah.
So what we're discussing is whether to move that stuff to Article 9. I feel that especially the budget issue should be in Article 9. I don't have any problem with also the ordinance issue, because if it's an ordinance, it can always be amended. Should the next election require an amendment, getting that, Tom. But how does everybody feel about putting a sunset clause, that's how I'm calling it, on budget limitations? I don't think we should just put it off forever. In other words, it could be 6, 8 years before we finally get ranked choice voting if we decide we can never afford it.
The worst case from a budget standpoint, people probably don't remember 07, 08, but at that point, communities were scaling back. They were spending less and less money. Excise tax revenue was dropping, collections were dropping. There were decisions to made to shut the town hall, shut the city hall, et cetera. So if something like that happened, that would kind of be the worst case scenario where a community might say, it's not a lot of money, but we're already cutting things that we have now. We can't do it now. Could that last over 4 years?
So why not just,
So that was, yeah.
why not just strike the dependent upon funding in accordance with the implementation budget? Why just not make it regular biennial city election period?
Well, I think, in other words,
get 2 years.
If we vote yes, it has to be implemented in 2 years, is what Sarah's proposing. Mayor, I'm asking you, because you know the money.
Yeah, I mean, so, I understand the concept and how it supports the will of the committee. I mean, I think it.
Will of the people is what would
Yeah,
be the
will of
case.
people, but as a sitting mayor looking at what's coming at us financially, that to do it automatically or within 2 years, I mean, I would be remiss not to cringe a little bit. I mean, I think if it's a little.
That's why I said 4 years,
Right.
you know, at the max.
I'm good with 4 years. I think 4
Yeah,
years
I'm
gives you a
I'm
little
just,
bit of,
you know,
gives you a little bit of leeway.
I think there's a commitment to do it or there's not by the
Yeah.
voters, right?
Right.
If the voters said yes and
If
you
the vo-
said we can't do it
Right.
the first year,
We
they'd
get it.
accept that.
Yeah.
But if they said it again after 2 more years,
Right. Then it becomes an issue.
I think I would agree 4 years.
Yeah.
So by 2011, things were starting to come back.
Right.
You know, so the
Gives you a
worst
little
case
bit of
scenario communities have seen since the 20s.
Yeah.
and again, it's a one-time expense. We're not gonna spend
2 years.
$9,000
Every year.
every 2 years, correct, Barbara?
Correct.
There's maintenance costs, but once we get the software, and that's an estimate, we don't know what it's gonna cost, right?
I heard 800, or 8,000.
Yeah, I was 88, 45, whatever, somewhere in that range.
Is my language okay? The budget limitation shall only be applicable for the first biennial following voter approval. Ranked choice voting must be implemented by the second regular biennial election following voter approval.
That's fine with me.
Does that mean 4 years?
Yeah.
It does, but I thought that was more appropriate.
Yeah.
Or something.
Are we okay moving these two sections to section 9.6 as per Barbara's suggestion? I am.
I'm fine with that.
I agree, it makes sense. It's-
So you don't think it's necessary,
I'm
Joe?
curious.
No, I think it doesn't matter. I think if Barb,
I'm curious, is anything else in Article 9?
That's the next subject, yes?
Well,
I'm
what
curious.
I'm saying is this is all applying to transition between a town and a city.
Exactly.
It's not, well, it's not just any old transition that we feel like calling a transition. It's an article with a specific purpose.
We would probably have to title it, well, the time of taking effect for ranked choice voting. I mean, anything we put in there is transitional in the charter. I do want to discuss whether we want to delete the rest of it, but that's a separate subject. Right now, it's 9.6 if we
If
keep.
we're talking about getting rid of the whole thing, well, we shouldn't be putting new stuff in it and then deleting it.
Well, is that the
No,
purpose?
no, that we have to have transition for new things. We just don't have to have transition for way back in 1996.
You know, a scenario where we might have used it again would be if we had looked at staggered elections, and in order to get through the election staggering, we had.
You'd have to have,
You need
right.
1 year, 2 year, 3 year.
Right.
That would be something that would be appropriate to go into transitional, because it never gets used other than the first time that you use it.
Yeah, this is why I think it should be transitional.
agree.
Whether the rest of the transition clauses are kept is the next subject.
Do I understand this correctly? Just, this is the only charter I know, that the purpose of Article 9 is just to have information that, once it's passed, is no longer relevant, so as to simplify the remainder of the document?
It's to make sure that the transition between a town government and city government was orderly, like making sure all the bylaws were changed to ordinances.
Right, so it's just saying, like, these are things that are gonna have to happen once this charter is ratified, but once they've been ratified, then no one needs to look at them, so let's just put them in its own chapter so that when you're looking things up, you're not going, oh, did the city already do that?
We're getting off the subject. I'd like to know if we should keep this in. We need it, I think it should be in a transition.
in 9. I think it should be
Whether it's
9.6.
9.6 or whether it's 9.1, it's depending on what we
If we
decide.
delete everything else, it'll become 9.1. I think that I think you're on.
Barbara has some thoughts on that, but we'll get to that. So, I'd like a motion to accept the language I've provided and to move B and C of 7.1 currently to AB 9.6.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. 6 votes in favor.
Hold on. Who was the first? Who made the motion?
I think.
Dave, and then
Tom
you.
got the second.
Tom, second. Thank you.
Okay. So, I am willing to go either way on adding precincts. Tom made a good point to me. He's worried that people will wonder why it was a single voter election. Barbara feels single voter elections aren't that difficult.
Single winner?
single winner elections aren't that difficult to manage,
No, I'm not saying
but,
that. Don't put
Less
words in my
difficult.
mouth.
well, it's easier than,
Could I,
let's go around the room. If we want to do it or not. I'm willing to, to say yes to it if I hear a consensus that we want to. But I could go either way. That's where I'm at right now. So, I know where you stand.
I was writing, but I
can
didn't.
I make
so
a case? real quick?
All right,
Hold
make
on.
your kid.
I was writing, so I didn't hear what you started with.
712, which is precinct counselors. We're opening up discussion of whether or not we should add that amendment. I believe it will be asked to be amended by the full council. We are a council committee. Council can do that. So why not discuss it here? Also, I've heard we could put it on as a separate question. That's why it's here as an act amending, an act amending.
I still don't understand what you're talking about.
This one,
Single winner.
I get it, but
If you saw my document,
this one,
He wants to discuss also using ranked choice voting for the precinct councilors.
opening that up again.
yeah, no.
Now you're okay, Tom? Brad?
Yeah.
Okay. Tom wanted to start off.
Okay.
Okay.
We already voted on this, so if you guys haven't changed your mind, that's fine, but I do think, I'm gonna just say one more time, if we build the infrastructure that allows us to use it for the mayor, then we've already built the infrastructure that we would use for the precinct councilor races. Like, so if we think that there's certain elections where this could be advantageous for the mayor, then it stands to reason there could also be the similar situations, not as often, obviously, on the precinct level where we could use this. I just feel like it wouldn't cost us anything extra. We've already built, like, if we're doing this for the mayor, we're already building the election infrastructure that would be used. So it seems like almost overly complicated to just like limit ourselves to not using it even though we could. That's my case.
I guess.
Go, let's,
Sorry.
all right, Robert, go ahead.
Not having been at the discussion, I was, and to be honest, not 100% certain that ranked choice is something that I would personally support. I was pleased to see it was simplified down to there. That keeping it simple, I think, to me was a good thing. By expanding it to more races, there is the potential for complexities to come up. It's not just the software issue. It's anything that Barbara's talked about, votes that might be manually have to be hand counted because they get damped during a rainstorm. There will always be a case where something doesn't fit in perfectly and it makes the counting of those ballots more complicated. The more separate elections you have, the greater the chance you'll have those anomalous situations. So again, it's not just the software investment, but it's recognizing if the voters choose to approve ranked choice voting, the benefit outweighs the potential, not only the complexity of the process, but the potential for, some wrinkles to happen along the way. The more elections we have at the same time, using the same system, the more chance that some type of a wrinkle might come.
Okay, but you said that, if I quote you correctly, the advantages outweigh the
Well,
disadvantages.
I think that's what voters will have to weigh, and I'm not saying that it does,
Right.
I'm saying
Right.
that's
Voters will have to.
correct.
Other members want to speak to it?
So
Joe?
Tom, are you arguing just for precincts or for at large too?
Look, if it's up
I
to me.
think it's on the table now, it's
Okay, what-
precincts.
Yeah.
Okay then, okay.
But if it's up to me, we use it for literally every election in America. Given that like where we are right now, what I thought is if we are already committing to making, subject to the voters' approval, making the investment to use it for the mayoral election, then whatever work we do to handle that election is the same work that would be done to handle the precinct elections, which are also single winner elections. They have the same structure as the mayoral
Yeah.
election.
That's not-
So to me, it is logical to not tie our hands on that.
So Barb, how does that complicate balloting? I mean, is it gonna be weird if you're in
Well,
precinct?
let me just give a little history on this. I look back at all of the now, every election's different, and things can be different. In 1996, our first one, I think every precinct went more than 2. since that time, for precinct counselor, in 2003, precinct 1 had 3 people, and every other one did not. So chances are, things stay the same, it's not gonna be even used much. But that's just saying, looking at history, not at what can happen. I think the thing that, I understand what Tom's saying, and I do say, I had thought maybe we could just say single winner races, could, you know, be bunched together, but, you know, didn't like that. I think
I
it
don't
would
want
be,
one.
I think it would be a little confusing to voters to say, well, why are we doing it for district council, or what's special about district council? They probably are not gonna understand the single multi-winner thing like we do right now. I just wonder if they might get confused. I mean, the more races that you have doing this, the more things that can happen weird, and I mean, it definitely, things can happen. I like mayor because it's simple, it's the most important, it's what a lot of places do. You know, a lot of places will just have mayor with everything else the way it is. I think it's a good thing to start. I don't know, I just think it might be confusing to people.
Okay, just a little more, okay, a little more follow. So Barb, if you had 3 people running for a precinct seat, and someone filled in 3 dots, would that ballot be thrown out?
Oh, yeah, it's overvote.
So I'm just wondering if people get confused and they're thinking it's ranked choice voting, and there were 3 people running for a precinct, and they, but you mean
No,
rank
they're
them,
used-
you rank
they're
them, you don't.
seeing
No,
that-
it would be set up, it would look
Yeah,
different.
right, never mind.
Right now, it would be just the way it is, then it would have a different.
Yeah, look, right, never mind.
Who wants to go first? Pat?
So, I have one comment about that, and then one comment about logistics. Like, so we did this whole thing at that last meeting. Omar was here. Now he's not here. So it feels weird to me, and I know how he voted last time. I know how I'll vote because I voted
You
yes.
voted in favor, I think.
No, he did not. He voted
He just
in
wanted
favor
the
of the mayor,
Okay.
and he voted not in favor of the mayor and the precinct councilors.
Okay.
Precinct councilors. So to me, it's, I don't know, just feels weird to not have his word, even though,
He was
considering that I
invited
know
like
what his.
everybody else.
What's that?
He was invited like everybody else.
I get
He got
it,
the
but-
agenda like
And
everybody
also,
I
he's
get
a
it, but
counselor,
this-
and he'll get to vote on it again,
I get
if
that.
we pass it. And I'm saying we're gonna pass it.
So-
We have to have 6 votes, so that means everybody.
So that's the only weird thing about this for me. Listen, I was in favor of it that night. I was in favor of the mayor and the councilors. You convinced me during that our discussion. So I don't necessarily have an issue with it. My only issue is, it feels weird because Omar's not here to say anything.
Okay, Dave.
Maybe that's just me personally.
Well, I don't think we have the votes, but I'm in favor of including the precincts. I think we're overthinking it. I don't think, the infrastructure, I agree the infrastructure's gonna be there. I think the spirit gets a little bit damaged by only having it for one. But, I voted for one the last time because I wanted to move things forward, being the mayor. But I don't see, once you get through the first learning curve, people are gonna say, why don't we have it for a precinct?
That's true, too.
And I also believe
Which was
that
our thought the last
the
time.
precincts have not been challenged historically, because people have been referring to the current precinct councilors. I think this might, just encourage some participation.
Well, that was the one thing that people were saying. If we open up to ranked choice voting, it's not as bloodthirsty if someone wants to challenge an incumbent.
Yeah.
I'll get to you in a minute. Did I?
But to be fair, you need 2 people to challenge the incumbent for ranked choice voting to mean anything.
Okay.
That's totally true.
Well,
But-
wait. Let me get the people who haven't talked yet. Go ahead.
I would say, if we're gonna do precinct council, we should do precinct councilors and not mayor. I just feel like mayor would be too important to do ranked choice voting right away. Like, I feel like we're such a small town. Like,
We're doing mayor.
We're definitely doing mayor.
Oh, yeah. We're only talking about adding precinct
We could
council.
change that as well if we want to. Not that I'm gonna suggest it, but we could.
That's a very good point.
My reason for bringing it up is because
Very good
I
point.
didn't want it on the ballot to bump the mayor if people didn't want it. And others said to me, it's gonna come up in the council, so I said, why don't we talk about it again? I'm willing to vote yes, but I think everybody's points are good, and one of the biggest points is it hasn't been necessary. And Barbara makes a great point that most cities and towns that do this, cities, use only the big winter races like the mayor. So, Chris, you want to say
I
something?
think, I agree with Dave, and I think you're overthinking it. You're not voting to approve ranked choice voting for district councilors or precinct councilors. You're voting to allow the public to decide.
That's,
So once you're already letting them decide on mayor, it's not a new issue. You might as well let them decide on precincts as well. There's really no reason not to.
Tom.
Right now, we have two voting systems on our ballots, right? You have the single winner races where you pick one person. You have the multi-winner races where you pick multiple people and you cast multiple votes. So that's already we're dealing with a situation where people have to, there's instructions saying, only pick one person from this following list, and now pick 4 people from this list and 6 people from this list. If we do ranked choice voting for the mayor, then in certain years, people will have 3 different voting systems on a ballot with 4 elections on it, right? They'll have ranked choice voting, single winner with ranked choice voting for the mayor. They'll have single winner without ranked choice voting for their precinct councilors, and they'll have multi-winner block voting for the at-large and for the school committee. To me, that is increasingly confusing. Like, to have 3 different ways of voting on a single ballot is more confusing. So if we're going to move over to ranked choice voting for mayor, I think it actually simplifies things to just do it for all single winner elections. But that's my thought.
Further discussion. I want to move us along. Okay. Mayor, you haven't said anything. What do you think of this? In between.
I think it's interesting. What's being decided here is really deciding to put something before the voters rather than, and that I started going down the rabbit hole, and now I'm thinking it's the we're culling very big ideas and kind of putting them, and it's for the voters to decide. I mean, I would want if this committee decides to go forward with ranked choice voting for all the seats, I would like to see separate, like for the mayor or the district council, just so that would be confusing to me. If it was up at, like, will the city of Easthampton go to RPM? I think it's a lot.
You're saying not for everything, you mean?
Yeah, like have it separated out. for mayor.
My feeling is it should be separated out because I believe strongly that if you did it for everything, people said, no, that's too confusing. And the one we want, I want, personally, is the mayor's race, because that's the most important position in town. Okay, can I have a motion to approve, and we'll see if we have the votes?
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor to add 7.1.2, the election of precinct councilors by ranked choice voting. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hands. 7 votes. Okay. This will be sent, this document we have here will be sent as it is, with Barbara's amendments as necessary. So Barbara, my one I sent out, the one thing that Barbara said is you don't know what the legislature is going to do. I want this on the ballot. I think the legislature will put it on the ballot, but I mean, do we have to say we want it on the ballot?
We can.
We can, right?
There are legislative petitions. I remember this one from when we were sitting in this room talking with the Collins Center representative. They said that the legislature actually likes to see people come forward and say, basically, we would like to amend our charter subject to voter ratification, and these are the questions we want to ask the voters. That actually makes the legislature feel a lot more positive about doing these, because they're like, oh, well, if the
So
subject to the
when we
voters
send
anyway.
this, instead of an act amending, these are questions. Would it be, shall the voters of Easthampton accept, or whatever the question should be? Should that go to the legislature, Barbara, or should it be just this?
I mean, usually when you have section, you have, well, look at how.
We're gonna have 4 different questions
Section,
here.
And then you say the last one, section 4. this act shall take effect upon ratification by the board. We just put that in there.
Okay, then we'll do that. So this is going to the city attorney next, Joe? With your permission? We have to get this approved, this document by the city attorney?
Oh, because it's on a timeline?
It has to, he has to approve it before we can go to the city council for final approval, and obviously.
Is there a risk of amendments coming into the council? I mean, if we amend it,
Do we want to go to the council first? I don't know.
I think that so we touched on this at the last meeting. I think that any amendments that are gonna come up on the council level, if they do, like, I don't think they're gonna change, like, if the city attorney, like, finds that this structure is legal, then if they say, oh, we actually want it for these seats too, or we don't want it for these seats, or whatever, like, I don't think that that's gonna change the, like, constitutionality of the questions. You
Building
know,
out.
how certain is I don't think.
I agree with that.
I mean, yeah,
So,
like,
don't you feel it should go to the city attorney first, Barbara? Before the council?
I think especially the transitional part, I kind of wonder, well,
If he says it shouldn't be in transition, that's fine. It can, at the council level, we can change it. I think I agree. I think it has to go to the city attorney first, Joe. Okay? So I'm gonna send this to the city attorney. We have done something as a committee. We're done with this particular thing. It's gonna go to the voters. Yay!
Yeah.
Or the
If the council revoke, there's a lot of us want it. So I really strongly suggest we put the public hearing on, that you citizens that worked really hard on this come and talk to the council. Say, don't you dare change anything. Anyway, Article 9 is next up because Barbara didn't know if we should change everything, but I don't know why, Barbara, we need all this now? Can you tell me why we need
well,
everything?
the only one I wonder, and this is something I think the city attorney should weigh in on, is the very first one that says continuation of existing laws. Because there have been votes that were taken by town meeting years and years and years ago. and
That still exist.
That still exist, and are still on the books and rules. I think some of, like, the rest of them, I think, I don't know if they're necessary. I think it's just 9-1 that I kind of wonder if it should stay in there.
I think that makes sense.
I think I kind of wonder about, I would be interested in his comment on what should happen to section 9.
Well, then I think that I'll add that to his task, is we want to delete most of section 9.
Yeah, I just.
If you can tell us which ones of these sections we should retain.
I mean, just reading, if you read them, at section 1, 9-1, there can be things that were voted years ago, and we want to make sure that it's understood they're still valid.
I think that's true.
But the other things, that if you read it, it kind of.
Well, this one says all town agencies shall continue to perform their duties. Of course.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessary anymore. You, Robert?
But I think I'd like him to kind of weigh in on that personally, just to make sure.
Well, should we, other than 9-1 and the addition of what would be 9-2, the rest should be deleted? Should I ask him that question?
The question, I guess, on page 48, if we want the page, same page number, where it talks about terms of the city collector, the civil defense director, is that the only place in the charter in which those terms have been established?
Yeah, do you mean like the list of all?
The list there, and if
Yes.
so,
See, I wondered
if they
about
only
numbers.
exist here, you take them out.
There's been a lot of changes and there's been names, but that was another part, I'm like, should that stay there? I'm not sure.
Or should it be defined, should it get
Well-
pulled out and put somewhere else?
Like,
We have
We'd have to.
But isn't this all in the administrative code now?
Sometimes we do it,
I don't know if it is, I don't.
Just because it
Yeah.
says like, you know, sorry, I'm looking over your. Okay, so notice that a lot they say amended 3 years by administrative code, blah, blah, blah. So is all of this language also in the administrative code and thus redundant?
Whether, Parks and Recreation Commission consists of 5 members to serve in
as
terms
things
of
were
3 years.
changed through
Yeah.
administrative code, I made little notations, so we know that they were changed, but some things like for register of voters, this council on aging, you know, all those things are still in. they're still the same.
Well, yeah, and this is a transition saying they would stay unless,
But if those
Administrative
words
code.
don't appear
We've
anywhere, they're not
transitioned.
defined.
Yeah,
If you remove
I don't
the
know, I
words.
guess I'd like them to weigh in on that, just to see what it says.
It also defines the authority of the mayor, because it
So,
explicitly
the
says
basic
here are the
question-
positions the mayor appoints. Without those words,
I always thought that
who appoints?
the transition language was, one, to help transition. Two, I think last time we talked about, the last charter review, we talked about reviewing some of that. We kept it in just because it was historical. I think if you took it out, to be honest with you, everything that exists would still exist. I think last time we just were a little bit nervous and we just said, well, we have this reference, so we'll leave it here.
Tom,
Does keeping it in do any bad things?
Right.
Because asking the solicitor costs money. And, I mean, while I agree that we probably don't need any of this anymore, I'm wondering how much, like, city resources we want to commit to, like, cleaning up a document unless it's, like, the source of confusion or consternation.
well, he has to already look at 9-6 that we adopted. And I
Yeah.
don't think we need the time of taking effect that's already there. It says a special election to elect the first officers, et cetera. That's done.
Right, yeah.
So the time of taking effect can be deleted with this added, the new language add.
I guess another example would be if there were contracts signed, if there were any decisions that the town made as a town.
That's what she
This
said.
makes it clear that those obligations and commitments continue forward today.
That's why, especially if then it's the very first one.
Yeah.
Well, I think fine. I think, as Tom says, there's no disadvantage. I think 9-6 should be amended because that is particular to when we changed the charter in 1996. But the rest of it, I don't think hurts to keep. Well, that's not true. A lot of 9-6 is there. I think I'll just ask him to look at 9-6 and tell us what should be kept and what should be deleted, but only 9-6. All right, everybody?
That's fine.
So we're not gonna delete anything else. I'll just ask the city attorney, because we do need him to weigh in on what we just adopted.
Okay.
All right. Article 6. I wanted to point out that one of the biggest things in here is the Department of Public Works. We're gonna get to that. But I've talked at length with current board chairman Stan McCoy, and he has some ideas, and he would like the committee, he informed them today, I guess, were you at a meeting today?
Thank you.
They're gonna have a meeting in which they're gonna hopefully come to it. So we're gonna discuss Department of Public Works ideas, but I'm gonna wait for them to come at the next meeting. But right now, let's talk about 6.1, and we have from the mayor and Melissa Zawadzki a suggestion. My first question is, Melissa put this in the form of an act. What I was gonna do was send everything other than the stuff we thought had to go on the ballot to the legislature and have them approve it. Does she wanna do this earlier or something, or?
No.
Or do you
Melissa's-
wanna do it earlier?
No, she's doing a Master's of Public Administration certificate course, and this was one of, is to do a home rule charter act or whatever, so.
Oh, it's homework.
Yeah, so we.
It looks very nice.
So she
Very
used
nicely
that
done.
format, but looked at our language. And so the format that we're suggesting isn't like, we suggest how we're going forward, we put it for discussion.
So my initial reading of this, correct me if I'm wrong, is she's basically, what is currently B under 6.1 Administrative Code
Yeah,
is pretty much the same
yeah.
there, but you're eliminating the council's ability to reorganize the charter, to reorganize government. A, ordinance is subject only to express positions of general law. The city council may, by ordinance, reorganize, consolidate, create, merge, divide, or abolish any city agency. I don't know why, we've never done that as a council. We've done it through administrative code.
We created the telecom committee and the
The energy
CRC
committee.
and the energy committee.
You know, you're
by
totally
city
right.
council members.
I thought of that in a different light, but that is exactly why we need this language. So I'm not in favor of eliminating A, because that would prevent the city council from creating an agency such as the telecom committee. Am I right? Somebody help me here. I think we need to keep that.
The language that we put forward is to clarify what is an ordinance, what is a having code, and how we use it. It's not back and forth over this.
Well, she says striking out subsection A. That's what's in the top of her document. By striking out subsection 6(1)A and B and inserting its place just administrative code. I don't feel we should strike A, because the city council should have the authority to create a city agency like a telecom committee, unless that's someplace else in the charter where we could do it.
Yeah, that was not the intent. I mean, I feel a little under the weather and this is, but no, it was just clearing up the language so we know what we use in ordinance for an having code.
Okay.
And not to disturb any power right or way that legislative versus executive branch of government would create about the.
So basically, we're not changing anything in 6(1). Really, unless we adopt. The only thing I wanted to ask was,
I may.
oh, you're here.
How are you?
Are your ears burning?
A little bit.
Sit down.
Not deaf yet. So I think that A and B are redundant, and I was trying to make one process to change and reorganize so that ordinance and administrative code didn't do the same thing, that you picked administrative code ordinance. That was my intent.
But it doesn't allow the council to do it on its own, which is what we just did with a couple of committees.
Oh, well, then add that, you know what I mean, but just replace it so that a reorganization, just so that there's one process, from the, you know what I mean, through administrative code or through, but the reference to ordinance was what I, like, why ordinance and administrative code, why not just administrative code?
Traditionally, administrative code has been initiated by the mayor's office.
But you
If-
just said that like, all those,
If we created a committee, we just did this. We did it by ordinance.
That I put forward.
That's true.
The CRC.
She put it forward.
And
The telecom.
Telecommunications, he put
Yeah.
forward.
So we have to have the ability of the council to put something forward. This administrative code doesn't allow for that.
I mean,
Current
then add the
language.
language. I mean, it's not about clipping anybody's power, it's just about being clear about admin code and
Okay.
ordinance.
I see your point, you don't want there to be redundancy, but yet the power lays differently on each of those mechanisms. Administrative code is mayor heavy, ordinance is council heavy. So if you give one or the other, someone is losing some.
well, I guess my point was that, like, a reorganization is administrative, and you can accept or deny any reorganization. So that authority always has to go through council.
But I
But-
think what they're asking is, can they create an authority, not just accept or deny the mayor's submission?
See, right now, like you said, your telecom is initiated by the council. This language doesn't allow for the initiation of that simple thing. I think we should adapt it some language that would allow the council to still do that, but not reorganize like the
So
administrative code.
this section, the way I interpret it, which could be wrong, is for city government offices rather than
Committees.
boards and committees.
Agencies.
And is there another section for boards and committees?
That's
So
the one.
maybe that's my misinterpretation.
Well, it may be that, I'm trying to remember, I gotta look through the charter to find whether or not adoption of a city committee by the council.
The word city agency shall mean any multiple member body, any department, division, or office in the city of East.
You talk about definitions? Yeah.
So,
I see this as being too broad, A.
Right, we could limit it we could
Right.
still limit it.
So maybe A is for boards and committees, and B is for
City.
city departments and agencies. Because that's where I got stuck, is the
Mhm.
difference between a city department, and that's where I focus.
So we need some language that takes out the redundant language in ordinances, but allows for the creation by the council of city boards and committees.
There is a section on boards and committees. This is under organization of city agencies.
Okay, where's the section on, oh, you mean down below?
Member boards and committees.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm not. Where are you looking? What chapter?
Did you just look at?
Section 8 is the multi-member boards. I understand what Melissa says here. This makes it sound like the city council can get in, create new departments and merge departments.
I think the intent of the original charter people was that the city council should have equal authority to the mayor in doing that.
I agree wholly with Melissa's intent on this document,
I don't disagree, but
but I will be very clear. I didn't write it. She did.
I think though
That could be the Sudafed talking, but that is.
There could be a situation where the council feels something's very important. We need an office of diversity. And we have a mayor that just refuses to follow along, as an example. How does the council force that?
I think that was the original intent of the founders of this document.
So can I make it?
Okay?
So even if you force, let's say we want an energy office, right? Like, I mean, I bet to this committee, there's lots of people here who are like, okay, we need someone who does energy, right? So we have an energy office, and you create the division. If the mayor's not involved, on board with that, they'll never put it forth in the budget, and the city council has no authority to add money to the budget, they only have authority to take it away. So, you really,
But you do put them on record,
Yeah,
which is a tool.
And it is the legislative body creates the laws, the executive body is supposed to administer the laws, so. If the
We could,
legislative
if
body
it really
says,
got that adversarial,
we want to
we
create
could take
this,
it
it
to
is
court
the
and say,
responsibility of the executive to create it.
I mean, I don't even think about adversarial. I mean, it's just.
Well, that's an example.
Clarify, yeah. I mean, I know we go to the worst case, but just clarifying, I mean, to be able to say in a non-adversarial way that an energy department will be created by the legislative body of the city, well, okay. But there's a part two, and it's not a yes or no. It's, and, the executive branch administers, the government and can choose not to fund it based on what we need to get done within the year or whatnot.
that's true, but
I mean,
then
not-
Chris's point is we're making a statement, the city council can make that statement and create it. And maybe the mayor vetoes it, but then the city council could override the veto. In that kind of scenario, which
Yeah.
I don't think has ever happened,
Right.
this was designed so that there was some allowance for the legislative body to have some equal authority in creating agencies that they felt were necessary, whereas if we take the council out of the discussion completely, the only thing we do is say yes or no to your mayor's
I mean, on
discussion.
the face of it, I mean, ordinance, ordinance is about legislating and the will of the people through the legislative body, and administration is about carrying out the will. I mean, it's always been confusing in our document about when is ordinance used or admin, and I just think if a mayor is supposed to, isn't the reason why we went to an elected mayor form of government is you don't like the mayor, the way they're administering the city, they're out. I don't know, the codes are more and more important on how to efficiently organize and manage and lead city government. I completely understand this could look like a power grab and whatnot. I think it could be classic. There are just some simple things that don't rise to the case of an ordinance or an admin code that clarifies an ordinance that was passed by the city council 5 years ago or something like that. I would seek just clarity of when is admin code used or when is ordinance used, and what's the effect. The will of the people is to add an energy office. Great. administratively, our, we are negative 2.99% growth. Low energy office, this was kind of
Right, and it also says, it makes an assumption that that process is not being handled in another division. You know what I mean? Like, the city legislative body, if they were to say, well, you need to do this, well, you need to, and it also, like, there are certain things in there, I know that says that you can't eliminate the tax collector's office because we have to have a tax collector. It doesn't have to be any one person, but you gotta have one, because every city does. But, you know what I mean, like, I think there's a line between, like, how do we, the mechanism to which we deliver the results is administrative. The guideline of where we're going is legislative.
I could go either way on this. I see the redundancy of it over the years. We haven't had, in my history, we've created small things, but we've never done anything so big that it would become an adversarial situation. Like, we're gonna create a whole new department that requires funding. I mean, we didn't. When we did the telecommunication thing, he did that, but he said, one of the big questions was, how is it funded? It's not being funded by the government, it's being funded by, if we ever did
Funded, it
the.
has no budget. It's-
But the point is, that's the point, so.
Right. And if they wanted a budget, they'd have to go to the mayor and say, hey, we want some money to do this thing. And that's,
But we ought to be able to do that kind of thing still. But I don't disagree with the notion that the administrative code should be for the mayor to line up reorganization of offices, create new positions, whatever, in a division.
You don't think that's in theirs?
No, I think it is.
Oh, I think it is too.
I think there is some, I don't think the city council
Yeah.
has the kind of, I mean, we are representatives and we should know what the government is, but we don't have the day-to-day knowledge of a government operation so well that we could know what will be the consequences of these decisions. If we make this new treasurer, finance committee, finance chair, that whole thing was initiated by the mayor's office, it wasn't us. We were sold on it because it made sense, and we had other cities and towns that did it. But the point is, I couldn't possibly vote on that with the knowledge that Melissa and at that time Mayor Toznik had about how it would work. I don't have the day-to-day operational knowledge. So, to me, putting that in the mayor's office is correct. But I still think we need some language under A, and I don't know if it's the word ordinance, but
Maybe,
I'm gonna go to Sarah because she hasn't spoken.
are there
Don't
any,
leave, Melissa. Sit down.
are there any current city agencies, boards, whatever, that will be endangered, become unfounded in some correct way by abolishing A, right? Is there anything that's suddenly gonna be just sort of hanging out there, like, oh, it was,
I don't think so.
So all city departments are created either in the original charter or through administrative code change, and any reorganization of those that have happened over the years have gone through those to change departments, have gone through administrative code, but it's the ordinances that's been, I believe, the committees. So maybe, not, because I wasn't looking at it through that part. I was only looking at it for like the day-to-day operations of the city. That's where but I'm confused, Barbara. You said there's a section 8 that has committees in it?
There's a section about multi-member boards.
You don't know where that is? Because I can't remember. I think I remember that, but I don't remember where it is.
General provisions, chapter 3.
It doesn't, I'm looking at Article 8.
It's procedures.
That's just procedures for multi-member bodies.
So maybe you don't abolish A, but you leave A for committees or.
Some kind of language, city council may,
And those boards actually do sort of represent, what the direction, like as the board gets stronger, they ask for staff, you know what I mean? This is what happens, you know what I mean? Like over time, like they become more active or they become defunct.
The other thing I wanted to ask is, I'm glad you're here, I think the ordinance section could be one that says the mayor or the city council may create a board or committee, etc. But also, what about a single position that doesn't, if we want to create a new position, right now, it has to be done, it could be done through ordinance, or it could be done through administrative code. But administrative code is reorganization of a division, so what did you think, how do we create just a single position?
The single positions have been done in the past, one of three ways. So there's the pay plan, which there's that list. We have added and taken away positions from that list over time, just positions, just like, you know,
Dog catcher.
van driver, dog, right, like those are the positions that were on the list.
Okay.
And so that list has to be accepted if it's changed by the city council. The administrative code has only been to,
Reorganize.
right, like to change a department. So, or to create a new one. And then, what was the second part? But then like contracts, like all other employees that are not paid plan, like Barbara and myself, have employee contracts, which means if they create or eliminate a
Appointments.
position,
You mean appointed people like Barbara and yourself? You're appointed as,
and we're also pay plan. Any person in the pay plan group, and there's about, what, 50 of us maybe, we don't have a contract. So we go through this process of, you know, do you accept the title or not accept the title? Do you accept our rate of pay? Do you not accept our rate of pay? Whereas in the DPW, they have unions. And those union employees negotiate for, oh, you know what we need in our department? We need a position called, I don't know, clerk of the
whatever,
works.
yeah.
Right, you know? And we're gonna we want that clerk of the works position put in our contract, and that's negotiated, and that position is added. So not every city department comes through this, only the ones who aren't unionized.
I understand that, but
So like positions are created by any union position can be created.
when we create a position, regardless of what it is, we do get a job description, don't we? I mean, when we did it through the pay plan, whether we did it through the pay plan or not, or through the administrative code change and reorganization, like when we created the finance director, we knew how it would be set up. What
That
your-
was administrative.
administrative code change, but we created a single position by combining 2 or 3, you know.
Right.
Or when we added the tax collector to your position. So
That
I'm
was-
saying.
That was allowed through that position.
But what I'm saying is the administrative code, to me, allows for that kind of a change, whether it's one position or 2. It can be interpreted as reorganization of departments. If we create a position. Huh?
That's administrative.
That's what I'm saying. Right. I'm saying that I want to make sure that's still allowable. We don't need the ordinance to create it. I mean,
No, the ordinance only has to do with pay plan employees, which for whatever reason is under ordinance instead of negotiated internally like every other city employee.
you want it to be a union? I don't understand that.
No, I'm saying that it doesn't usually come before this board. Even non-appointed employees have to come, their position becomes before this board.
If they're created, right? I mean,
Right, if you accept them on the list.
If you're creating it, but once they're on the list, you appoint people to it. We don't have anything to say about it.
Well, right.
Unless it's a department head, like a new.
Right, yeah.
All right, Tom.
I think I'm in favor of this. At first, I was a little nervous because I did create a committee via ordinance.
Right. Well, you know,
And-
my, that's not what I would, so put it back.
But I do think that if we're talking about clarifying the relationships between the executive and the legislative. I mean, I've been fairly outspoken about saying that I interpret some sections of the charter to say that the legislative branch of the city has powers that we maybe have not always thought that we have. And so I've been pretty outspoken about that. In this case, this seems like, I mean, I think that it's interesting, but like I don't actually necessarily know if these are things that I think the city council by ordinance should be doing, even though I did it once. I actually
Everyone
think,
has regrets.
I mean, and I've enjoyed that committee, but if like in retrospect, if I had, with what I know now, I mean, that was the first thing I ever introduced to the city council. You know, a year in, maybe that is the sort of thing that the right way to do that would have been to request an administrative code. Or to, and maybe do that formally through the council through a resolution, but to request an administrative code forming this committee, because I do think at the end of the day, the organization of the city is subject to the mayor's approval. Now, I do think that the city council can, I mean, my belief is that the city council can, by ordinance, set certain limits on the, or certain standards or limits on the behavior of those departments and committees, but I also do think that the fundamental existence and organization of them is pretty clear-cut executive power.
The only thing I disagree with is the fact that in administrative code, we could say yes or no. We can't amend. Your telecom committee, what if councilors wanted to amend it? If it came from administrative code in this current language, we couldn't do it. We'd have to send it back to the mayor would have to agree to amend it and bring it back.
Well, that's a little
what
bit of a pain, but there's nothing like procedures. If we say like, look, we're not going to approve this with 7 people, we want 9 people, then we just say that to the mayor, and the mayor has the opportunity to either change it to 9 or.
And we've done that.
And so also, if you recall, I think that both the assessor's office, when they changed their organization, and when the creation of the finance department, which allowed the merger of the treasurer and collector position, which happened in much later date, those administrative codes sat in subcommittee for a long time, like hashing out what we wanted to look like before, so that by the time it went to the council, yes, someone could put forth an amendment, but they had been ignoring the conversation for 2 months by the time that, that happened.
Yeah, but it's funny, when you say that, I read this language, and it was in committee and we debated it and everything. Is the current language allow for this council, I have to read this carefully, does it allow the council to make amendments? The current language, not the new one. It doesn't, right? The city council may only vote to approve or disapprove of the plan. So when it was in committee, we were making changes or asking for changes,
Well, right.
but only if the mayor agreed to them.
Submit it the way you had talked about, which of course, if
That's
they want it
possible.
done,
That's a
the
negotiation, right,
cooperative,
okay,
proper
yeah.
way to work it. It does have a time limit on this, and that was in the old, in the existing code, but that simply says if you do nothing. If you do nothing, then there's a time clock, but if you send it to committee and start the process, then you can keep continuing it, just like all your other.
Well, this has 60 days and the old one had 60 days.
Well, right, but that's what I'm saying is, you have longer than that as long as you take an action. The 60 days is only if you do nothing.
Oh, right, okay.
I guess without
So you
paragraph,
could leave it in committee for a year if that's what it took. You know what I mean? Like if you kept asking for the extension of the meeting.
That's right, that's
I've
taking
heard that a
action.
few times.
you know, without paragraph A, the council has no ability to initiate anything.
We can't
As you said.
initiate a change in organization, but I'm not necessarily against that because I wouldn't, if I wanted to do it, it would be, I don't know what it would be. We've never had to do something major. We've done small things.
Administrative
And I'm not
organization.
sure I want to take that away from us. We could write something that's very simple for boards and committees.
For what it's worth, if I wanted to completely circumvent the mayor's office with that telecom thing, we could have done something like this. We could have created a special committee of the city council with citizen members, right? Like, there's,
Well, right now, paragraph
That's true.
A says that by ordinance,
Yep.
you could create anything you wanted.
and we did.
Well, no, but a department too.
Yeah.
And I think that's,
could
I think,
abolish the
no, but I think that's what's redundant.
Could.
We won't.
It's not redundant, it's,
I'm just
some
saying.
people have a different opinion about it.
Well,
In the history of the
yeah, but I think
government, we haven't done
we've
it.
evolved though, where we want departments to be administrative and not ordinance. So I think you can leave A in, but it has to be reworked. A might have to be reworked a little bit.
That's what I'm thinking. I don't want to take it totally away,
Right.
but it shouldn't duplicate the administrative code, because I don't think the city council should have the ability to do the same thing that the mayor can do, with the city council not having that kind of knowledge, institutional knowledge. I mean, obviously, the mayor can veto something, you know, like, we're going to create the Department of whatever. I can't budget this, we can't fund it, so, and to go to that scenario, I'll never happen, so.
Perhaps it's some wording, and I don't have the wording, but more specific than just city agency. The city
Yeah, like-
agency right now is so broad, it covers everything and anything.
Like board or committee.
No,
instead
A
of
multi-member
division.
board or committee.
Yeah.
But
You
you
know.
have to take that out of the existing definition, right?
No,
Or
what she's saying.
just not
In
use
this
it.
paragraph, not as the definition,
She's
not
saying
change the
they're saying
definition, change the
paragraph
word.
A, just on.
Because a city agency is everything.
So
we
instead of
There's a
divi-
definition there.
Right, so say don't use the word agency.
reorganize,
use
consolidate, create, merge,
a more
divide,
specific
or
word
abolish
for-
any board or multi-member
So we have enough.
committee or
That's
whatever.
possible, which would prohibit the council from getting involved in abolishing the police department of DPW. or
I'm,
something
by the way,
like
I'm
that.
completely, like, we never,
I don't think
ever
that's-
would want to do that. It's just, it's
To be clear.
just thinking.
To be clear, since it's being recorded.
I was just trying to think of what the craziest thing that we technically
get that in
could
the
do
minutes
with
here,
this
hold on.
is.
Tom said get
Perfect.
rid of the,
Tom moved.
Just as a point of clarification though, if council did move to abolish the police department, it could be vetoed.
But we could override that.
We have 6 votes, that's all we need.
Well, there are,
Oh.
not to be entirely radical here, but say we ended up with an incredibly corrupt department that was organized in a way that protected individuals when they acted very improperly. You know, if it had some sort of organization that was completely inappropriate and
Other than the police, which have state laws and federal
hold
laws.
on, what I'm
for
saying,
that.
you know, so maybe, I don't know, maybe like the
DPW.
yeah, you know, maybe it's protecting people who are like, so, you know, I don't know, like bullying coworkers and handing out hours in bad ways or something, whatever. What if you want to, like, we've seen this on the federal level, right? They
Slate clean.
yeah, exactly. They've abolished one agency and they've started another one with a similar function but different foundations,
God
like
help us if we
Border
ever
Patrol
got
and
that.
ICE. I mean, that would be very radical, but I can see,
So, for example, you ever read the news, people like me get arrested a lot for a dozen, okay? So,
But let's be clear, she hasn't done that.
Well, not-
Not abolishing, we're not abolishing the police, we're
But-
not.
and so.
No.
that-
Melissa is not.
Right, but so that would be something that you would be concerned about, and obviously, so typically, either the head or entire departments get removed and replaced. But like the police department and, like I said, like the tax collector and the city clerk or whatever, we're established, that we have to be part of government because there are rules in order to function with the state that have to be called those things. Doesn't mean you can't send everybody home. And it's happened. People have been walked out the door because, you know, especially lately in the
Especially for
treasurer collector, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
just walk them out the door.
Yeah.
And so that's really the method to do that, is send everybody home,
Yeah.
everyone gets.
That requires the appointing authority to discipline someone, and if the appointing authority, that being the mayor, is in cahoots with the embezzlement, then we have a problem.
We have a recall election. though. Like,
Well, wait a
there's
minute.
like.
Well, it's usually criminal charges. not orders.
that clears everything up real fast.
She brought it up.
Yeah, I don't envy you.
I brought it up,
This is
and
gonna
then
be
you got-
But no, I mean, like, I guess the only case where I could see this happening is if, like, a mayor by administrative code created some ludicrous department that was like a giant waste and like socially harmful somehow. Then I guess in that case, then you might if it's like this isn't something that like is a
Don't fund it.
necessary part of the, but that's what I'm saying, is that at that point, you just vote to defund it.
Well, and the other thing is, she could create this ludicrous department, but we have to vote in favor of creating it.
Sure.
That's what the
but
code says.
What if, like, right, but.
So we're in
yeah,
cahoots
so-
with the ludicrousness.
Yeah. No, I agree. I can't even find like a weird hypothetical. where this
I
seems
think,
appropriate,
I think
so.
David's got it. I think we should just change ordinances in some way, and I'll think of some language to get us rolling on it, that just keeps us at the level of boards and multi-member boards, creating those kinds of committees.
Or at a strategic level of operation.
Right, and the operational level is the administrative code. But what is that language? If Robert, if anybody wants to put forward something simple, we have to look at, city agency is defined, but it's broadly defined. We can limit the definition in 6(1)A. But so we would probably change your suggestion, Melissa, to simply just changing 6(1)A and leave 6(1)B alone. 6(1)B, this is 6(1)B. I haven't matched it word for word.
Close to it. Pretty close.
Okay, well, I'll look at it. Everybody look at it, make sure, but it looked the same to me in my going back and forth.
I think she fixed some typos.
Okay.
I did, I know some of the corrections were, it bothered me that we were maybe in one section and two in another.
Well, I think Barbara has volunteered to go through the charter and look at those things, so we can send it all to the legislature. Make sure the comment, all right. Let's go to 6(2). The biggest thing in here is Department of Public Works. Do we want to jump there?
Well,
I thought you didn't.
I thought you were gonna wait for.
Yeah, I thought we were waiting for Stan.
Well,
yes.
I wanted to bring out some things that Stan said so we could dwell on them before we get to the next meeting. Okay. But, Joe?
Yeah, so I think 6(4)A anyway, there's two parts. One of it is
641, establishment scope.
6-4A.
Oh, this is Melissa's.
Melissa's.
In here it's 1.
Oh, okay. But, so our current charter says that you can do all this, but it needs to be done by ordinance. So I talked to the mayor, I'm in the process, working with the DPW. They're going to, put down what the additional responsibilities will be. So because we are now living under the current charter, we need to do what the charter says. So that will be submitted to city council to create ordinance, further defining the scope of the responsibilities of the DPW, which now includes maintenance, repair, city buildings. So we'll take care of that under current charter. What I see about this is it does change it, that those can be in the future changed by administrative code. The question is, do we want to change that to change the responsibilities by administrative code, or should it remain as ordinance, which is in the charter we have now?
So my point was to not have those kind of changes go through ordinance at all. Right? And so actually, in the second half of this paper, I created administrative code to do exactly that.
Second
And
half.
that's what I sent this to.
Yeah.
To do, but right now, we have to work under the
It
previous.
actually says that you can reorganize a department, any department, as a through administrative code.
So it's
current
kind
charter.
of-
Yeah.
And the only reason this is different.
But that's not
is-
that's not reorganizing. Is that reorganizing? It's just changing. It's just defining the responsibilities of it.
But I think that's reorganizing. That's interpretation.
I mean, that's the one part of this friggin' document that I read and it seemed clear to me. That it said, these are the responsibilities of DPW. If additional responsibilities can include blah, blah, blah. If you want to do so, you do by ordinance.
Well, right, but ordinance doesn't define any other department. Ordinance is not the mechanism where any other department operates its own roles and responsibilities.
It's
So
clear.
that's kind of where I got stuck, and that's why I was like, take it out, that I was like, why is ordinance?
Because the ordinance is legislative, and I believe when this document was written originally, they really wanted an independent Department of Public Works, which to me, and allowing the legislature, the ordinance to be developed and adopted and amended by the legislature, the city council, took it away from the mayor. mayor's office has very little to do with the Department of Public Works. I'm not sure that should be changed, but I'm saying, right now, the way it's written, ordinance was there, administrative code is strictly on the mayor.
But it also says the Board of Public Works determines what the roles and responsibilities, that they don't have to go to
There
you
you
at
go.
all. So why would they create an ordinance? Because the Board of Public Works defines the direction of their,
I think that's a conflict, I agree, because the city council can create the responsibilities through ordinance, and the Board of Public Works can do them too.
no, I think they have more authority
Yeah.
than you, and you're acknowledging.
You're saying they could just ignore city council?
Make their
I
own.
think they're a very strong board, yes.
Yep.
Oh, by all means, I've seen it.
And think
I don't disagree, but so what you say is if we tried to amend something, the duties and responsibilities through ordinance, they could just ignore it?
I don't know if, that's the way I interpret it. It says in this section that they determine the responsibilities of, and carry out the department, what is carried out in the department.
But then back to 6A, it also allows the council to create ordinances that reorganize, et cetera, so it's any city agency as it's currently written.
So there are several, and this came up before, because I know that you had talked about certain departments who report to boards. So Board of Public, there's many departments that report to a board. Barbara's department reports to the city council. The assessor reports to the city council kind of through the Board of Assessors. And the Board of Health, the health agent reports to the Board of Health. These are they just don't fall in those boards are strong.
Only thing is, they're very strong, but they do get appointed by the city council.
So they get appointed by the mayor.
Or confirmed, sorry. I mean confirmed.
Yeah.
If you look at the actual act that established.
I was wondering.
Have
Well,
we read
the-
those recently?
Well, the interesting thing is the evolution. Cities and towns have different applicable statutes, as you know. Towns that have water systems, for instance, have to have a water commission. That state statute applies only to a town. The statutory authority for the water system, if lacking a charter, runs up to the mayor in a city form of government. So some of this may be taking the statutory organization, Board of Water Commissioners, Board of Sewer Commissioners, Highway Commission, all of those are statutory titles that exist within Mass General Law within the town form of government. They don't exist within the city form of government.
So you're,
And maybe this carried through into,
The Board of Public Works was established by some special acts.
Okay.
And any other, should really kind of take a look and see what.
I only read what was right.
Yeah, no,
Which-
what you're saying is what Bob's saying, those are special acts
Well,
from the,
depends on whether.
and they may or may not be, I don't know.
right. But what do you think, is it the intent, or no, that's too strong, is it the idea that maybe the Board of Public Works should fall more under administrative?
I don't know what the intent was.
No.
This,
No, what would you, right now,
So
how do
this-
you two feel?
this,
Going forward.
when I wrote this, I left the Board of Public Works as a standalone committee, but I did lessen their authority slightly, because currently, appointment of that department head never goes to the city council, and this would allow for that, the same way that Barbara and I go to the city.
Well, I have lots of ideas that way,
But it's as it reads right now, they do it all themselves.
They do it all, but I want to get back to the ordinance part of this, because that puts the city council in. I'm confused by what Joe was saying and what Melissa's saying. You have some clarity on where you think the
Well,
board wants to go with
It does say
this?
exactly what Joe said, but that was a conflict to my direction, where I was like, I don't think ordinance should be involved in the organization or the daily operations of a department, which was where I started. So when I got to this thing, I'm like, okay, fine, change it. change it through the mayor and the city council with the appropriate authorities that any other department would change. But that process is administrative. That's, I was a very,
Can I ask?
these are the boxes.
Well, can I just, I just want to hear again what Joe said at the beginning
So
there.
I guess what I'm saying, it sounds to me like there are, surprise, conflicting statements about the way things can be done. You said, one, it sounds just like administrative code can be used most any time to do most any change. You said the Board of Public Works determines what their responsibilities are.
Yeah, and that's what it says in here.
And then it says also in here that if you want to change it, it's done by ordinance. So there's like, it sounds like there's conflicting.
Well, there's all sorts of conflicts,
Yeah.
I think.
So, I mean, the question is, I mean, I can understand, I mean, certainly public health. I think the reason why we are the appointing authority for the auditor, and probably DPW, is they're trying to mitigate the political influence on those departments that are very important for public health or sanitation, things of that sort, or money, for instance.
Separation of power.
Right, and so I think maybe the reason why they want us to do ordinance is they don't want the mayor maybe be so involved to the point they say, I have an election coming up, or we can't afford that sewage, we can't afford to fix the sewage right now, so we're not gonna do it. So I'm wondering if the reason why you guys are not as involved is to keep away some direct political pressure.
Mayor.
I would just say, to counter to that, is with the way with our Department of Public Works is set up now, we're appointed for life, and it's usually.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying
talking
there's-
about the director.
Yeah.
But I just want to like clear this out and maybe to be impervious to politics, but not everything is politics. I mean, we have a board, right, who work very hard, who know not a whole bunch about public works and look at it in the keenest side possible. They also don't know a lot about the position itself and what a director of public works should do and what a director should or needed to know 20 years ago or 5 years ago or 5 maybe even every year. To put that burden on an appointed board, I guess $25, to look at the performance of a director of DPW and understand that they have the right training or that they are getting, their folks the right training or needs help. Like I really, if there is nothing else, there is a tremendous lack of administrative government and department heads of professional development support. And it seems that professional development, folks in this building are incredibly good about it. I think it's something that they pursue independently, and when no funds are available, they fight very hard for it in their budgets, and they use it. And they're known for it. If you go on one of these listservs, if you go to these concerts, conferences, it is very likely to see a Val or Barbara or Melissa, or Joe, and as a person who is really going back and forth. Very independently driven, not saying anybody's a slob, but that is weird. I mean, we've spent a lot of legal money since I took office on what might not be money, but helping our HR procedures and policies get cleaner and more efficient.
Right.
And I'm
No, I
worried about
agree with
those
everything
boards.
you said. I agree with
I
everything you
agree
said.
with
think
a
there's-
lot of that.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's admin. I mean, I guess that's my long way, is I see it as an admin.
Let's go back to something you just brought up. One of the big things that we want to establish, well, Stan brought it up and I really want to establish, is a way in which, besides the 3-year appointment, which I totally agree with, is that there can be some kind of a review, performance review of the Director of Public Works, akin to how the Superintendent of Schools, say, is reviewed. And they're reviewed by citizens, right? Elected, but they're citizens, just like the Board of Public Works. So that review would involve language. I think it's in Barbara's contract. She has to follow the rules of the Department of Personnel. The rules that we have established for the personnel, Barbara has to follow them.
Yes.
We want to establish that kind of language for the Director of Public Works. We want to establish, Stan and I were talking about the possibility of there being a review every 3 years or every year, an annual review, so that if issues were brought up through the Human Resource Department, then personnel could bring them to the board, executive session, you discuss them. But right now, there's none of that. It's appointed for life, and there's no
Indefinite,
recourse.
It doesn't mean life.
Huh?
It says indefinite. Indefinite
Well,
would be a day or life.
Well, whatever.
It just,
But my
there's no set
point,
term.
I'm just bringing this up for food for thought, because Stan's gonna come and bring these things up. All right, sure.
I would be curious to hear more about review, because I think again, the language that we're talking to now is about consistency and efficient management of our municipal government. And we don't have a hard review process. Like, the superintendent is reviewed, and there are procedures that go through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the school committee. and
Okay, they're
and
established by state law.
So maybe something like that exists. I'm not saying no for or against it, but I would be worried, because one could argue the Department of Public Works is important, but as is really, this is good. Like, I mean, any one of our major department fails, we're in trouble.
And the review is reappointment.
Yeah, and I think that that's, in absence of a more broader thought out review system, and cities, those are expensive.
Okay, I agree. I'm just
yeah.
bringing up what we talked about.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
great point. I mean, maybe we don't need a review, but we should have a reappointment. Every department head has a 3-year term, the big ones, you know?
Right. And
We
that's
should
not
do
to
that
say
there.
that the person couldn't stay in the position
Right.
for 40 years. It's just that.
Well, no, but every 3-year appointment, you have a review, and the board.
The purpose of the board is to provide oversight.
Right.
And without any meaningful consequence to that oversight, it's pointless. So,
Well, that's why the 3-year appointment to
Right.
me is a good change. The other thing he brought up, but the mayor's gonna cringe at this, is he had trouble, he brought up a good point. Two members of the board can't meet with you because that's an open meeting law violation, because there's only 3 members. He'd like to see it expanded to 5, with you being one of the board members. You
Do
being.
you guys have a problem with that? I would not have a problem with that.
My point is, like the school committee,
Yes.
where they have trouble is if Joe brings up something financially, they have to go to the mayor to check it, come back, the mayor said this, so there's a back and forth, there's an inefficiency. Let me say this, I am not advocating what Stan's saying, I am thinking about it, makes sense to me.
Yeah, I've never.
To put the mayor on the board and have 4 members so that if 2 members want to meet with the mayor, it's not an open meeting violation.
Well, if 2 members meet the mayor and the mayor's a member of the board.
That's
that
true, that is a violation. But anyway, if 2 members want to talk about something, they can. It's simply, I'm bringing it up just because we talked about it, and I'd like to hear what the board has to say about these kinds of changes, you know.
Yeah.
The review point you brought up, if we don't do a review for any other department head in that way, we shouldn't do it here. It makes sense.
But I think I know that was one of the things that ultimately long-term that HR is looking at. And so if everyone else gets a review, then at that time, so would that position.
Well, we could do that. What I want to establish is the provision that, I don't know, is it in your contract? Does every department head have to follow the rules and procedures of the personnel department, whatever's established in there?
So there's.
I mean, some people do have to do that, right?
There's, so for Barbara, Valerie, and myself even, and Laura, your assessor. So we have state, because our rules are defined under the state, we have rules that we have to follow that are state regulations that, kind of, they're the top. And then any personnel policy as to is
Time.
Monday a holiday, which it is, then, that policy is established in the personnel office.
But the rules of like comp time and all this stuff, which I find
Those
very
are rules
confusing.
established by the personnel office.
Right, but I'm saying,
Or
should
CBA,
they apply to
bargaining
everybody?
agreements as well.
They
Are a big
apply to
factor.
only the pay plan group. is what I was reading.
All right, well, fine, but the director of public works is a pay plan employee.
Yes, yes.
So what I'm saying is, let's make those kinds of rules consistent, just as a 3-year term. We brought that up, we were talking about that. So I'm just bringing forward things that we discussed. And I don't know what language, but I'd like to hear from the Board of Public Works next time, to hear what they say. Yeah, sure, wait, then Joe, then Bob. Then David, then Bob.
Oh.
Joe. Joe first.
Listen, one of my concerns took the stand and stuff is the way that we obviously have a big tax bill for the school. They're talking about significant increases in sewer and water rates. Is some, did you have any solution? It worries me that two separate departments are raising rates and there's not a single person overlooking the cost to a taxpayer. Did you address that?
So I wouldn't address that, but I would say that that is a big argument for the separation of power from the Board of Public Works, because the Board of Public Works is established to be self-funded. It does not hold a lot of money. What they're billing you is what it costs to maintain our infrastructure. And if they're not billing enough, that means our infrastructure will fail. And what good is the school if you can't get to it and there's no water?
You know, Stan brought this up because I brought that very subject up when I met with him, Joe, and he said that he was very eloquent. The board has to make decisions based on need. They can't be politically motivated. If the city council or the mayor said the voters are not going to like this, we're going to not have sewer or whatever.
Right.
They have to make decisions based on the needs of the department, with the help of a professional like Joe telling them this is how we're going to do it. He made a very good, eloquent point that if you put politics in it, and it is, because if I'm a city councilor and I know half my district didn't want to do the schools, and the other half now just says we don't want to raise the rates on sewer and water, there's a big difference between, you know, what that kind of infrastructure for sewer and water creates a huge problem if it's not repaired. And it has to be made based on the need of the department. And he completely turned me around because I was talking to Joe about oversight. Completely
Rates are
turned
only
me
one
around.
half of the equation, because you approve the budget. All the rates are is the mechanism by which you fund the budget. You either go into deficit or you go into surplus. By
Correct,
approving the
but-
budget, you establish how much money is going to be spent every year.
Yeah, but to the extent that we will only put in the budget enough, you have to be able to substantiate through the rates, the spending.
Yeah, good
So-
practices go that. The City of Holyoke went for 10 years dipping further and further into free cash every year because the rates were not sufficient to fund the budget, but the council approved everything.
They ignored.
But the council does, you decide how much money gets spent.
I mean, you
And
can't,
the
they
rates.
can't add to that, correct?
Correct, only the mayor can add.
Correct.
Right, and so we have had a practice here since before
To
my
balance
term,
it, yep.
you know, that that whatever it costs to operate as if it was its own entity,
Yeah, right.
it has to be self-supporting.
Yeah.
And it does have
Only
certain-
half. Not the highways.
No, we're only talking about water.
sewer,
Right, so
water,
the DPW handles both.
That's
Yeah.
correct, but you know, there's, because those departments.
I know, I mean, there's that.
There's an intercharge, and so there's a good portion of highway, just because they work collaboratively
Right.
when they rip up a road, that.
You can fund through sewer.
Subsidize that to some,
Yeah, right.
Subsidize is the wrong word, but they
Well,
pay
that's
for
what it
their
is.
services, they pay for their services. So.
Which is allowed by state law, that formula.
Right, so if the rates are not high enough, and we have trouble funding the departments, then it's, if the board chooses not to raise rates, and we need to raise rates in order to meet DEP regulations, and we have fines to pay, those are gonna come first, and we can't, the DOR will not allow us to, set our recap if our revenues are out of balance and we haven't established another funding source in order to pay for them. So there's a consequence to the operation of the city as a whole by not raising rates, because maybe you can't even maintain the minimum.
Right.
And that's why, when you consider not having a Board of Public Works and putting the raising of rates into a city council, which some,
Northampton did that, didn't
I
they?
believe
No.
it was.
They did, yes, they did. They abolished the Board of Public, well, it was a progress where they stripped authority away from the Board of Public Works
Yeah,
with
what
the
do
new
you mean?
charter. And eventually they dissolved the Board of Public
Right.
Works because the Board of Public Works served no purpose at that point.
That's what I was gonna bring up. There is some example, I'm not advocating it, but if someone wanted to research it,
But I'm saying
Northampton went
that-
through this.
Right.
Yeah, and I worked in Northampton before when the Board of Public Works was very strong, and I would say stronger than Easthampton's Board of Public Works, and who they were and how they ran their department. They were very strong advocates for their department. So But if you strip that power away, you put it in the legislative branch or the executive branch, and you have to institute a stormwater fee, or you have to redo an entire section of town for sewer, or the wastewater treatment plant fails, and I don't even think about what that would cost. Do you really want to be, as elected officials, making that decision, that unpopular decision, or do you want to be able to push it off on somebody else?
And it's an enterprise, it's a business.
Yeah,
So
it's a business.
your user fee
Yeah.
establishes how that's paid for.
Right. And so-
Water and sewer, and
Right, and so they can make that decision as a, as if they're operating a business and they're appointed and they're sort of protected from, it's unpopular sometimes to.
what I like about adding the mayor to the board puts a link between, they still have the authority to make the decisions, but there is a link between that, the city side financially, the city side politically, all that.
I don't
It's
disagree
there.
at all.
I like the notion that
I'm
there's.
just saying, don't dissolve the public works, because you don't know what.
And we're not gonna do that. Well, at least I'm not voting for that.
And what I'd say is if you strip the authority too much, you might as well dissolve it.
Well,
So that-
I don't want to. I just want to try and make it more efficient. I thought Stan and I came up with this idea of 5 members with the mayor being part of it. Helps to add efficiency to it. It's 2 more meetings a month for the mayor. But he said, well, they're usually only 10 minutes. Anyway, it would allow for more discussion. I'd like to discuss that at the next meeting when the board is here. That's what I want to leave this meeting with.
I mean, one more big comment, because I
Yeah.
mean, it sounded like, the concerns about raising the rates were strictly politically motivated, that if I raise the rates, I may not get elected. We saw the number of people that came forward just with the school tax, seniors who saying, we can't afford to live here. And now we're gonna add on this huge water tax? I mean, I think there's legitimate reasons to not want to raise it that are not politically motivated. Some people cannot afford it. I mean, the people who couldn't afford the school, they didn't even know what was coming with the water.
But in theory, they only raise the tax for sewer and water as is necessary.
It's what you-
But you prioritize things every day.
But Stan
The list
also
is
brought.
always this long, and you
Right.
make decisions to do this piece of the list.
No disagreement
Yeah.
there, but they're not buying new vans with this stuff, they're maintaining infrastructure that's valid.
I worked in the business for many,
Yeah,
many years. I
in a
understand.
perfect world.
But it's not a blank check. You have to make hard decisions every day about what you can afford to do.
Stan brought up the point that they have public hearings. People don't go to them as much. But I remember when we were renovating the sewer lines in my district in the Plains area, I had to advocate with them. We brought in, some residents were very concerned about the timing of changing septic systems. They just put one in and they're gonna force us to put sewer lines. I was able to advocate to the board to create I forget what they called it, but a timeline in which the person who just put it in could wait 10 years before they had to connect to the sewer line, so that they didn't waste all that new effort of putting a new sewer system, a septic system in. So, in other words, the Board of Public Works reacts to public opinion, reacts to a counselor coming in my district, hey, we're gonna do this, we gotta help these people. They actually listened and did the job. So in other words, all I'm saying, Joe, is that there is kind of a public people are gonna come to them like they came to us, say, wait a minute, I'm a senior citizen, I can't afford this. But we did the school because we knew we had to, even though it was gonna hurt some people who couldn't afford it. But we had to do it. It's a tough decision. And they have to make tough decisions and they're not elected, so they're making decisions based on, this is different than a school. I mean, you could educate somebody in a log cabin, but you can't, which is what we're doing.
No heat.
But we can't run the city without sewer lines. We can't. Or everybody gets cholera. I mean, all right.
Well, and
It's
if you
getting late.
remember, Dan, when you guys did the sewer line in your District B, there was discussion of 3 ways to do that.
Right.
So we could either add it to the sewer rate and make it part of the enterprise. We could put it on the tax rate, which made everyone in town pay for it, not just
Water users.
not just water users, but that meant only the people people paying taxes, if you recall. And then there's the betterment process, which means that only the people getting the benefit of the connection would have to pay the fee.
Yeah, we went with the water rates because there's big users in town that help with that.
Correct.
I won't mention names, but we were very adamant that that was a better way to go than putting it on property tax office.
Right, and so, I mean, you could but at some point, if there's a failure, an emergency action will have to be taken. And so if the Board of Public Works wasn't going to raise the rates in order to do what was necessary, we would probably have to borrow money and not put it on the tax rate. And that has other consequences which you have to think about.
And we often, as city councilors, we have often finance enterprise fund or supplemental appropriations necessary because they had to do a study to find out how bad was our infrastructure. We bond that, I forget how we did it,
Yep.
but that came before the council. It's not like we don't have some oversight. So anyway, I would like to end our discussion this evening. Next meeting will be all about public works to start with,
April 25th.
April 25th. And because the mayor's gonna fall over. All in favor of letting the mayor have a sick day tomorrow?
No, you would not want the mayor to have a sick day tomorrow.
Oh, come on.
No, we got two big things that have to do.
I would like a motion to adjourn.
Thank you,
All, second? Sarah seconding, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all.